I'm Scott McDonald, and this is the perfect place to put a practice webinar. We're going to talk about locations and truths about where to go and where not to go. Now, it may not surprise you. Sometimes I think the things that we do best are telling you where not to go. I'll be honest with you, there are some places that are just terrible. Let me just say, sometimes the best business you do is the best business you don't do. But I want to talk about the places you should go and a few trends that have come up this week that I want all of you to hear because they're going to affect long-term business. So here's the deal. They used to have this expression, it's the economy, stupid. Well, I'm calling this one, it's the population density, stupid, because demographers have been having all kinds of meetings recently in which they're saying, what are the trends that we can tell our clients that show that a location is looking particularly good or particularly bad? Now, you would think, well, it's growth. Growth is going to be fantastic. Everybody wants growth, right? But it isn't necessarily the best single indicator for where locations are going to be good. So what I'm telling people right now is it's population density that is making factors that will come together in your best interest. Places that are densely populated right now are extremely difficult to sell. People don't want to set up businesses or invest in them. In fact, banks are even being a little leery, but they won't say this. Now, almost everything I'm going to tell you is being completely ignored in the media. Well, that's not too surprising. There's an agenda many people have. Well, that's okay. We don't care. We just want to know what you need to know. Now, at Dr. Demographics, we're all about knowing where to move, when to move, how to promote your efforts, and really we're looking at the trends that are happening right now. If a trend is breaking, I want you to be the first to know about it. So that's kind of the bottom line. What do you need to know? Now, as I said during Bill Clinton's last election, the mantra was, hey, it's the economy, stupid. They were saying nothing else seemed to be more important than the economy. And so every decision was made was based around this idea was how is it being affected in the economy? That's not the issue right now. Right now, it has to do with it's the population density, dummy, meaning the more people that are living in a location, the more chance that that location has the kiss of death. It means it's not the place you want to be. Now, you could say, well, wait a second, does that mean that all urban areas are bad? The fact is, no, they're not all bad just because they're in an urban area. But it is a bad thing if it turns out you have neighbors who are close by. And you may say, why would that make a difference? Why should my practice look for a place that we're not sitting right on each other's shoulders? It's because right now, everybody's still afraid in the back of their mind of any kind of a lockdown. They're thinking, I was in that stupid apartment and my brother I just about had to kill him because he was terrible, or because my mother moved in, or we just couldn't get outside. And so what people are saying is, I want to have room. I don't want to be crowded. Now, let me keep going on. The new call is it's the population density in the post-pandemic world. Now, I have to be honest, I don't know how long this is going to last, but I merely know that right now, realtors and demographers and, just lots of people are saying, now we kind of want to get away from each other. Now, I'm bringing it up because this is actually a message which is completely counter to what the elite crowd in demographics are saying. Many realtors are saying, oh, no, people want to go back into the downtown areas. But if you were to look right now at a picture of San Francisco, Market Street, you'd be able to roll a bowling ball down the middle of Market Street. Nobody is there. There are many parts of Manhattan that are similar. The same thing is true in Los Angeles and lots of other places that we'll discuss. So lower population density is what you want. They, on the other hand, want high density. Now, there's a reason why civic planners, city planners like it. For one thing, it really increases the property values on urban areas, and those are crazy high right now. Now, if you're trying to negotiate an office lease, you probably know that even in a month, prices have gone up for the leases. It's also being more difficult to try to lease a property for a short period of time. So a 3 to 5 year lease is like, well, no, I don't do that. We're a 10-year lease company, or this property is such in demand, you got to go with us. And that is proving to be untrue, but they're trying to convince you otherwise. So the length of leases, how much you're paying, and all that. Listen, this is no small deal, and it's going to have a bottom line effect on you. No one really wants high density for a couple of reasons. And one is price of the properties is extremely high. Although in high density areas, there's lots of office space available. Now, I just went through one in California. It's in Southern California. A doctor was saying, how good is this location? And they keep telling me it's fantastic. But the problem is it doesn't have any signage. It doesn't have traffic flowing by it. But more importantly, people who are in the area are really nervous that the businesses next door, the practices around the block, are not going to do well. Now, you may say, well, wait a second. Isn't it an ideal thing for us to be in a site where there is no competition, where there are not even other doctors who are going to have practices? Isn't that the best? Well, actually, that's not, because there's a certain kind of synergy that happens as practices get together. They form kind of a nucleus, and they encourage each other and support each other, even if they're competitors or even if they're not in the same kind of practice. We know that locations that don't have other practices operating, where there is no flow of patient base, those places are having a problem. So it's the population density, dummy, that is making the difference. Well, I should say 8 in 10 cities with 1 million population or more are having a significant problem. They're not getting people in the door. So if you look at the 10 largest cities in the country, only 2 are really making this exception that they're not losing significant population. Now, the 2 exceptions are Phoenix and San Antonio. And you may be kind of going, what's so good about Phoenix and San Antonio? I mean, what makes the magic sauce about them when it comes to population density? Well, the fact is Phoenix is growing well, and so San Antonio, for a couple of reasons that have nothing to do with population density. It has to do with employment and taxes. Now, Phoenix, granted, Arizona doesn't have an exceptional and doesn't have a bad tax base, but its property values have really increased in value, and regulatory burdens in Arizona and in Texas are remarkably low. So Phoenix and San Antonio are the exception, that they're large populations, more than 1 million, that have not lost population, and that's fantastic. But the others that are out there, and I'm going to mention Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and even parts of Florida are having a little bit of a challenge when it comes to large cities that seem to be densely populated. People want to spread out. Now, the lowest population density cities all gained. Albuquerque, Oklahoma City, and Tucson are kind of marginal. They, are large, but they're not doing badly, even though they have some population density. I think Albuquerque and Oklahoma City and Tucson are going to do much better over the next year. So if you're thinking, well, how good are these locations really? I'd say they're pretty darn good, because they have the characteristics of smaller cities, even though they have a large population. In short, the commute within these cities that are doing well, that are larger, well, they don't feel like high density cities. Now, San Francisco and Boston have lost hugely. Now, these are 2 of the highest population density cities in the nation. Now, some people are saying, wait a second, I like Massachusetts, and there's a lot to like about it. However, if you look at the part of the city, I should say the metropolitan area, which is on the east side, right by the coast, where Boston is, or you look where San Francisco is, which has traditionally been growing, there are lots of reasons why nobody wants to go there. Now, what I'm saying is not going to be true only of the cities I'm talking about. They're going to be truisms that I want you to use with any cities in the country and any parts of a city that are showing high density populations. Now, Seattle and Washington, D.C. have broken the rule. I mean, in short, they're doing much better than anybody thought. People are going, Seattle has done well. I thought there were riots there. I thought DC was a very dangerous place. Well, frankly, Seattle and DC are. However, the riots are seasonal. When it gets cold outside, they don't riot so much. It's also true that they are kind of making some recoveries. But really, the biggest reason why Seattle and Washington, D.C. are doing well, and let this be a fact that's going to matter to you a lot in evaluating locations, is they've got exceptionally good employment. Now, right now, I live in Utah, and we have about a 3 or less % unemployment rate. It's not the best in the whole country, but it's pretty darn good. If you were to go to these other places that I've mentioned in Arizona, Texas, Florida, and all along the Southern Corridor, North Carolina, South Carolina, North and South Dakota, these are places that have a large population, but it's not dense. They're spread out, and the employment rate is really guiding the way. Now, if anybody says to me, what are the statistics I had to look for? Obviously, growth is important, but employment is doing extremely well. And then the secret statistic I want you to remember is the labor participation rate. Now, everybody has talked about this. Well, we can't find workers. We can't find people to work in our business. And that happens. But it happens primarily because the labor participation rate, the percentage of people who are looking for work in those areas, have dropped and are continuing to drop. I'm not going to get into the whole issue as to why. Because if we look at the demographics of each of these cities that are not doing well, there are different reasons for it. But for the most part, when people are willing to work and want to work, well, that's when employment goes up and all of these supply chain problems seem to disappear, oddly enough. Now, again, I'd like to get into that supply chain thing, but I want you to understand, first of all, when an area wants to grow and people are getting employed, these are going to go up. A couple of other places, El Paso, Louisville, and Memphis have low population density, but nobody wants to move there. And I want to explain to you really quickly why. And again, it's the density. El Paso is not a dense city, but it's kind of in the middle of nowhere, and employment is not doing well. By the way, it doesn't really help that so many people are coming from Mexico to El Paso. Louisville has had a crime problem, and its population has been centered in the downtown, and it doesn't have a really terrible population density, but it's fighting those factors like crime and unemployment, and it's making it very difficult for people to want to move there. Memphis is the same thing. Now, remember, Tennessee is doing really, really well. If you look at Tennessee, there are 3 parts of it: the far west, far east, and the middle of the state. Memphis happens to be at the end, and population density is not high, but unemployment is. So again, it's not as though there's just one factor we want to keep in mind, but several, and population density is one of the more important. But Memphis, Louisville, and El Paso are in danger of losing population. Now, there are a couple of mitigating factors that I want you to be particularly careful of, that when people are asked, why are you moving to an area or why are you moving out of it? High crime is right up at the top. So if the crime statistics, particularly violent crimes, are visible, no matter how good your practice is, no matter how great the office is, don't do it. High regulations on businesses and practices are also becoming a major issue. And with COVID, there are some states and counties that are saying, oh, we need to lock down because our statistics have gotten too high. Well, right now, that is a reason for people to call the moving van company and say, get me out of here. Now, you probably know that when we're looking for the demographics of an area or we're recommending where to go, one of the databases that I like to recommend is the Ryder truck or U-Haul truck rental statistics. If it's expensive, they're making it difficult to get trucks, don't go. Another thing is the low employment. We found that some places have been, oh, we can't find workers. Oh, we really need workers. But very often, that's not a fact that's true of all of the employment. It's true of only one segment. So they can't find skilled workers within their industries. Longshoremen are right now in high demand in the coast, particularly in the West Coast, particularly in the northern parts, but all over the West Coast, they're in demand. But a longshoreman is not an unskilled laborer. And it's a person who it takes some long time in order to get the system down to work. How to load those trucks up with the containers are also a big issue. So I want to say low unemployment is cascading. When you can't find people of one particular industry, people in the other industries are suffering as well. So it's another mitigating factor. As I've already mentioned, the poor labor participation rates are hurting some states, and very much. If you were to go to Illinois, labor participation rates are falling through the floor, so they're just doing very badly. Now, it smells like success when you have several things in concert. So people are saying, how do I find a good place to go? What are the factors that will matter most? Growth is going to come to many places that right now are not growing if certain things occur. And one of those is the cost of housing has got to go down. The cost of loans is also going to have to go down as well. One of the things that's going to happen right now, and I'm going to predict this as absolute, that as the inflation rises, the Fed and other lending institutions have got to raise their rates in order to kind of cancel that out. I think we're going to see a major rate increase, and for that reason, if you were to get into a practice and purchase it and do that soon, great. But if you don't, you're going to have to sit on your hands for a while, because even the practices that are listed and you may be in negotiation for, I'm a little scared on their behalf. So I'm just saying it may smell like success, but you got to look at labor participation rates, population density, and interest rates, which are going to become a major part of your success. Practice potential is tied to lifestyle imperatives. So when people want to live a certain way, the places where that happens are going to do well. So everybody keeps asking, why is Idaho doing so well? It's because it costs relatively little to build a brand new home in a nice place or to purchase an existing property and improve it. That's why Idaho is right now among the top 3 states in the United States for new practices or practice purchases. It's the same thing that's happening, believe it or not, in Wyoming and Montana. In South Dakota, the potential for the lifestyles are fantastic. You can get the house you want at a low price, but that is not happening everywhere. Oh, by the way, keep your eye on Virginia, because I think as of maybe a week or two, we'll see what happens with that governor's race. It's going to be an indicator of what's going to happen with the East Coast economy. And if that is a big player, those of you who are on the East Coast, watch this space, because we're going to talk a lot more about it. Growth comes from these imperatives. In other words, if people want things, growth is going to occur, the economy is going to pick up, great things will happen. I say that because housing is one of those big things. Now, a lot of people are saying, oh, I really want to have an electric vehicle. Well, fantastic. But if they're not building power stations, I'm talking about where you can easily hook up your electric vehicle, there are going to be a lot of them that are going to sit idle in people's garages as they go back to gas-powered cars, in spite of what we may hear out of Washington, D.C. By the way, quick thing, shorter commutes are by far an imperative right now for practices. If you're thinking, well, I can always commute an hour to get to the office, I'm going to tell you, slap yourself in the face, because that's not true. Shorter commutes are becoming a very important thing for practices. And if you think that somehow going more than a half an hour to the office and back is going to be likely, think again. It's going to be one of those things that's a counter indicator for success. Dual practices are also rising again. What I mean by that is doctors tend to marry doctors or other professionals. When you have a male or female or a couple of people who are doctors, where they have to practice is becoming a bigger and bigger trick, because you've got to find not only how one person can get to work, but where 2 can. And therefore, you've got to find locations that are going to be in that lifestyle imperative for the doctors' lives. Now, at Dr. Demographics, I deal with this issue a lot. So if you would like us to look at an area and say, look, we have 2 different kinds of, I'm an endocrinologist and she's a physician and we need something else, let me know, because we have ways of balancing them and finding those locations that are really looking good. but it's a special kind of calculus that's not like finding other locations. All right. Now, another thing I want you to know, we are trying to find happier, saner practice owners. It's not getting rich, it's being sane. And if you're sane, you're going to stay in practice a longer period of time. So there has been a bit of a panic fairly recently in which people are saying, I can't stand my circumstance. Even though we're making a lot of money, if you're spending all of your time in a car, on a truck, on a bus, on a train, look, we have to get you sane. That's imperative. Now, if you want to come and visit us at Dr. Demographics, we have all kinds of other seminars and webinars we've done, topics for discussion, but we also have some pretty inexpensive things. Right now, I'm talking a lot about the telephone consultation. So if you've got a question, you want to have it answered, you want to talk about something that's unique to you and your circumstance, the telephone consultation is a very inexpensive way. We get on and do a video conference with you. We can set it up in just a couple of days. But I'm just saying right now, we don't have a lot of time. So if you're interested, please let us know and we'll be able to help you. Go to the website at drdemographics.com, look up telephone consultations, and we'll be able to help. Hey, listen, everybody, I'm out of time. I want to thank everybody for sticking with us. If you have any specific questions, do not hesitate to ask. We're always anxious to be here for you as you need help. And again, thanks so much for watching.